first thing I wanted to ask you about is why you encourage people to move beyond specific deliverables.
Wow, okay. No pressure. Hello, everyone, by the way. It's great to be here on this beanbag. Why do I tell people to move beyond specific deliverables? I think of things in terms of outcomes. I think that that's the short answer, is deliverables are what you get, but they don't speak to what people really want, which are outcomes, right? So the example I always use, I tend to use like design, service, business metaphors. But maybe I'll use coaching as an example, because I think
use both, because the design ones are interesting too. Yeah.
No one buys coaching, right? Like, no one actually wants coaching. They want what coaching does, right? The same way no one wants a landing page. No one gives a shit about a landing page. They want whatever a landing page is going to do, which is going to be get you leads for your business so that you can grow your business, and then you have reasons why you want to grow your business. So I'm always encouraging people to talk about the outcomes of the work that they do, because so often, because we care about landing pages, or we care about coaching, or we care about keynote presentations, if you're Patrick, and we want to talk about that stuff, we're actually like two ships passing in the night, because you're not actually talking about the person you're trying to help and what they care about, which is the outcome of your work. Now, the good news is, if you talk about outcomes instead of deliverables, it also allows you to charge more of what your work is worth, right? So when you say, hey, I'm going to give you this website, right? Then the person is shopping for a website, and they're going to the website store, and they're looking at all the different website options on the shelf from people who make them. And they're like, oh, well, you know, my nephew's website is $500. And like, if I just need a website, like, why don't I just, work with him instead of you, who's charging 50 grand? Like, you're putting yourself into the commodity market when you're speaking to that. Now, that doesn't mean don't do deliverables. Like, deliverables are how the world, it's how value is exchanged, right? So of course, those are the types of things that are going to happen. But when you're having a conversation about the outcomes of a website, for instance, it allows people to think more holistically about why they're doing what they're doing, and the value that's there, right? Yeah.
It's simply said, but very hard to do, it seems. Well, why is it? Like, because you're seeing it a lot of why. I'm sure this is a prompt you're giving to people, but yet it's not necessarily getting applied. In some cases it is. Why is it? Why is it so hard to apply, to transition from that mode of there's such an emphasis on the deliverables to an emphasis on the outcomes?
It's hard for two reasons. The first is that you need to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're working with, whether like it's a client or a customer or whatever, and understand what they really care about and what they need. And like I've said, they just don't care about the same stuff that we do, generally speaking. We're all obsessed with our craft and with the work that we do. And the people that we work with, they're obsessed about their life and their business and like making their situation better. So there's a fundamental disconnection that happens most often when we talk about the work that we do, where it comes from almost like a selfish perspective, that instead of going out there and being like, I remember Blake saying, like, it's the difference between being receiver-oriented or sender-oriented, right? And it's whether it's about you and everything that you're going to do and how great you are, or translating it to them and contextualizing it to them and their business and the outcomes that they want. So that's the first thing, is that there's just like a fundamental missing piece of empathy and connection with the people that you're working with, where you're not speaking their language and talking about what they care about. You're talking about what you care about. Second piece about why this is so hard to do is it because it requires you to actually advocate for the value of your work. Selling something that is tangible is easier to sell, right? You're like, I have this apple here, and take a look at it. It's an apple. You probably you have an idea of how much an apple might cost. Are you feeling the desire for this at this moment? If so, give me $1. If not, that's fine too, right? You don't have to really put yourself on the line when you have this like packaged up product thing like that you can show someone. But when you're actually advocating for the value of your work, you have to go beyond just like, it's this packaged up thing. Oh, 1 hour of coaching with me, right? Or a landing page and it's $5,000. And you have to actually confront the fact that oftentimes if you're an expert, you're creating a lot more value than you realize. And it can be uncomfortable to advocate for that because a lot of times the work is so tied up with our self-esteem and our self-worth, and it's all we think about, and we're obsessed with it. And as a result, selling a deliverable is a really great way to like distance yourself a bit from the process. And it makes it easier in the short term, but I think it's a crutch, and it ultimately stops you from doing your best work and, from advocating for like what you actually do.
There's like a paradox in there, because like to be able to offer things on the outcomes, you have to be both in it enough to advocate for your value, but you also have to have enough distance to be able to see what the client needs and wants. I imagine there's a great challenge. Like I've experienced that. I've certainly experienced that myself. There's a great challenge in that.
So one thing I'll say about that, Patrick, because I noticed, and this is like, I hear this thrown around all the time, everywhere. And it's really easy, I think, to get these two things mixed up. When you say advocating for your value, I think the way that, yes, tisk tisk.
Yes.
People always say, like, charge what you're worth, right? You got to charge what you're worth. You got to charge your value. And I think that is just like a fundamental mismessage of what's really going on. And it fucks people up, because when you're tying your value as a human to your work, it's just a recipe for disaster, So what I always try to encourage people to do is charge or advocate for the value of your work, okay, which is different than charge what your work is worth, not charge what you're worth. And when you do it that way, the next move that happens naturally is you have to ask yourself, okay, well, who's getting value from my work, and who determines that? And it's actually your customers and your clients, right? So it's not so much about like, oh, my internal worth is my internal work is worth this much. It's that there are people out there that would benefit from what I do. And it's up to me to advocate for a fair exchange of value where they receive a ton and I'm compensated fairly as well. And it's not tied up in my worth as a person. The problem that people run into is that it can be difficult from just like a self-esteem perspective to advocate for your work, even if you've disconnected it from you as a person. It's hard to go out there and say, this is, I was just sharing this with people before we started. The thought experiment that I kind of like try to encourage people to do is, athletes, artists, people like this, they have agents, right? And the agent's job is to advocate for the value of their work and to go to the market and aggressively advocate for their worth, right? So ask yourself, like, if I had an agent, how much would they be charging for my work for the perfect customer, right? And usually there's a pretty sizable gap when you actually think honestly about this. Or you can put me in your shoes. If I was your agent, what do you think Rich would charge for my work if he was advocating for it and going balls to the wall and being like, no, it's worth this much? There's probably a sizable gap between that and the prices that you currently have. And then that gap is where the personal work has to take place. Because then you got to ask yourself, okay, why does this exist? Why am I uncomfortable with this gap being here? Yeah.
I think there's like a lot in that. I just wanted, if anybody had anything that they wanted to ask or add to on that, like just to open up the space for it. Yeah.
So I like when you talk about charging the value of your work, not charging your work, and then it becomes about what the value is for that person. I was wondering if you could like kind of speak about like how a lot of what the value is about the person, not necessarily like you might do the same thing for a different person and it changes the value.
Yes, 100%.
Play the drums versus somebody who it's like this repressed thing in self-growth. I was just wondering if you could.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so much there. So there is always a trade-off that we make, and this has to do more with like how you price what you do, because every person that buys something is going to get different value out of it, and the discrepancy can be absolutely massive, right? So if you're committing to a fixed price for the work that you do, you have to be comfortable it's kind of set for the lowest common denominator, right? Like you got to make sure that the person who's going to get the least value still feels like it was a great deal. And then you're gonna have some people over here who this is like it was like I just stole from Jameson, like how great it was, which is why I often think people should be thinking about like value pricing, which is essentially pricing for the value of your work as opposed to a fixed thing. The problem with that is, often you do lose out on the leverage that comes from like a fixed fulfillment thing. Like I'm thinking about your product specifically, right? So you have to weigh those two options, right? But anyway, to get back to your question, every customer is going to have a completely different perception of the value of your work. And that's natural. That's how it's supposed to happen. So basically, you set the price, and the value is what they get, So if you have a fixed price, it's going to be kind of all over the place. If you're pricing for the value, the prices will change, right? And it's like, with like a more business example, it depends on like the vehicle that the client has access to, right? They're going to be, if someone has let's do something super simple. It's the difference between someone with $1 million business and $100 million business, And, okay, my work is going to increase your profit by 50%. What's that worth to the $1 million business versus the $100 million business? The value difference is astronomical, right? The same way in your work, the 6-year-old who's just learning the rudiments for the first time, probably, you could teach that, and you're probably really good at teaching it, but I bet there's other people that can teach it. But then when you get into that deep work with like your ideal client, there's the stuff that Jameson can only do, and they value that astronomically, because you find out like, okay, well, I'm not really teaching people how to play drums. I mean, they're going to learn how to play drums, but like what I'm really teaching them is like how to enjoy their life and how to be spontaneous and how to be creative and connect with being an artist and all these intangible things. And that's when people are like, yeah, I paid Jameson, whatever. I don't know how much your thing is these days. But it was like priceless to me. That's how good it was.
I'm curious for you. So for me, what I see when I'm teaching with a 6-year-old is there's a point where it starts to become painful because there's a lot of things that I can give that I don't get to share. I'm curious, like, kind of like what your relationship has been with stuff like that, where you're like, you know, maybe at one phase you were like, I only deliver this, and then you're continuing to develop, and there's more things you can deliver, and like, have you ever felt any like pain around that?
Can you explain to me the 6-year-old thing? Like, what would be an example of? Can you just like explain that example?
Yeah. So like, okay. So just doing it in my world.
Yeah.
Like, I have a master's degree in jazz drumming, and then I'm teaching somebody how to hold the drumstick in.
Yeah.
And it's extremely fulfilling, you know, because oh my gosh, what a gift. But there's also like, but I really want to show you how to like do metric modulations and how to write your first song and how to be brave and, you know, stuff like that. So then there's like a little bit of pain there around like, there's so much I could give to the right person that doesn't get shared when it's throttled. You see what I mean?
Sure, yeah. I do. I mean, is there like an ideal 6-year-old, or are you basically just saying like, I'm not working with 6-year-olds?
I guess I'm just talking more about like the relationship of like the higher or the closer somebody is to being able to get more of your value, the more fun it is. Or I'm just curious like what that was like for you, or if you've had
Sure.
that feeling, or if that was not.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like the concept that like I think is just such a such an elegant way to explain it is the line in the sand, right? Like we all need to have a line in the sand somewhere, and it will probably change over time as we progress and we continue to grow. And like part of entrepreneurship and where things get really hard, and like you're feeling that pain now, and I don't think that there's like a solution to heal that pain, is that as you continue to grow, you have to like let go of really good, awesome stuff that you could be doing for great stuff, you know? And that challenge becomes even more and more painful when the stakes get higher and the value gets higher, because you're like, oh my gosh, like someone wants to pay me, you know, whatever, like 10 grand for a couple hours of my time, and like I have to say no because it's just not what I should be doing, you know? And that's painful, because then you have to work through like, am I a fraud? Should I even be doing this? People would kill for this opportunity. I'm saying no. And then you have to be like really focused on like, okay, well, what's my line in the sand, and where am I going, and what am I focused on? So it's natural to feel that. Like it's just part of continuing to grow, that you'll have to like say no to more good stuff. Hello.
Hello. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is great, by the way. I think
Oh,
you're
thanks.
doing like an unbelievable job of articulating these things, and you're doing an unbelievable job of drawing them out. So really enjoying this. Like, how do you think it's possible to eliminate all pain from work?
I'm supposed to answer that?
But I think a lot of what happens within college is people have these businesses and they're in painful situations and things aren't optimized and things aren't aligned, and you and Blake and this community comes together and it helps increase the alignment and helps find the true value and helps people start to do what they're really meant to do. But and then things become more enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to work with less 6-year-olds and more people who you're like really helping and like and you're finding a lot of joy in it, but like, I'm just a little afraid that like, what if everybody comes to expect that like, if I just keep doing this and keep working at it, in 2 years or 5 years, I'll never do anything that I don't enjoy for money. I'll get to the point where I can like always only do things that I enjoy and make money from it. Or like, how far does it go? How much pain can you eliminate from work?
Dude, that's a great question, and give me enough rope to hang myself with, because I actually haven't thought about it explicitly. But what came to my mind originally when you asked is that there's like good pain and there's bad pain. You know what I mean? And you don't want to remove good pain, right? Because that good pain is how you grow. And often, and I've been guilty of this, people try to build these frictionless businesses that are like comfy beanbags to sit in, where like they feel no pain. I think Blake was alluding to this yesterday, right? Full control, master of my business, and like no one's ever upset. Everything is totally in my power, and that ends up being like a pillow prison. You know what I mean? Like you're so comfortable that like nothing happens, and you end up being unhappy. So I don't think that like the solution is we should be optimizing for no pain. Like Jameson, the pain he's experienced is good pain, right? Like that's a sign of growth. Yeah, so that's where I would land with it, but I haven't thought about it, so I don't know.
Do you mind speaking more to like the line in the sand? I'm curious, like maybe your experience with that, or
Yeah.
like knowing how to set that, or maybe even like how to know when to, if you need to adjust your handle.
Yeah, that's great. My sense is that your line in the sand should continue to move over time, and that's normal. The two ways that I kind of see it, I think back to like the two businesses that I've had, the agency and like the course business. And the line in the sand was really important because you can't be everything for everyone, right? Like that's just how you make like a shitty, generic, broad thing that actually doesn't help anyone. So for me, like the first line in the sand that I had with the course was like, I'm not going to teach people how to start a business, right? Like that, I was like, you need to have a business. You need to have already made money. You need to be good at what you do. Like that is where if you are not here yet, there are a bunch of people that can help you. I'm just not it. And by doing so, it allowed me to be more focused on helping the clients that showed up, right? Because if one person is sitting on one side of the room and they're like, how do I make money? You know, like, will you tell me how to start my LLC? And then I want to go deep with someone on like, this is exactly how you set up a system to like delegate some part of your business, right? Like, there's just too much of a gap there. And then with the agency, the way I kind of always set the line in the sand was much more mechanical, which was just like, the line is a minimum price. And that was the thing that was always shifting as I continued to progress. And that just allowed me to have more challenging projects and keep growing, and also like not have a million things going at once, right? Because if I didn't have the minimum price and it's like, hey, I accept everything, you'll be locked down by your time, you know? Like the bottleneck is always our time. So, I don't know, does that help? Do you have like a specific line in the sand that you're thinking about moving?
Yeah.
Okay, well maybe we should have just talked about that.
Yeah. But I'm so curious, like, is it the noticing like a pattern of the bad pain? Like as soon as you spot that, it's like, okay, potentially got to move my line in the sand up to.
I think it's a delicate balance, because the reason you have a line in the sand is so that you can help more people deeply, right? The wider range you have, the more you have to like contextualize. So what's your line? Just tell me what's going on.
I think it's so hard to explain.
I mean, I kind of already know your business, so you can just tell me with
Yeah, I think it's
knowing I know the context.
for me to, on sales calls, I think that I'm like devaluing certain things that I'm picking up and overvaluing like green flags on the sales calls. And I think I need to kind of like sit with that to put more weight on some of the like warning yellow, red flags or whatever. And yeah, like draw a line in the sand with some of those of like, if this comes up, it doesn't matter if they're like, love the plan, all these other things, like I just need to cut it off. Because I feel like I'm seeing a pattern of, I could potentially make some money, but I feel like it's gonna add like more stress and like more conflict. And just like not be the same type of results for other people. And I just have like, yeah, an intuition that like, still allowing and sort of entertaining that, it's removing space from like more ideal clients and sort of bringing that.
Yeah, you actually have a very similar problem to what Jameson was talking about, right?
Yeah.
And where it really feels painful is like when this person wants to give you money and you have to be like, no. Like everyone's a gangster until someone wants to hand them money and and you have to say no because it's not a good fit, you know? It's really easy to have a line in the sand conceptually, and then it's another thing to literally have to turn down cash.
Yeah.
I mean, the exact nature of this, right, is that they don't trust you.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty fair to have a line in the sand that like people need to trust me in order to work with me. But like, yeah, I mean, like a good litmus test in this instance is just like, if I'm ruminating on this and it's keeping me up at night and I'm having to debate over and over again, it's probably not a good fit.
Yeah.
Right, but you know that like, it's a two-way street, right? Like you're like, I'm confident in my side of the street, but if he doesn't trust you, he's not going to do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
So it needs to be both, right? It's like with my design business, right? Like if the client's like, I'm not gonna show up to the freaking meetings and like, no matter what I do, like if there's not a partnership there, it's not gonna work. So I think in your instance, it's pretty clear. But the exact nature, right, is there trust? And that's kind of like the whole point of a sales call, right, is to ascertain, like, do we trust each other? Like, I think that's the root of the entire thing that's happening on a sales call. Because even with a contract and money being in exchange and an agreement and all that stuff, like, you still have to trust each other. And that's the most important thing. So, yeah, when people start asking those types of questions, like, then you just need to say, so, like, what's really going on here, dude? Like, because it sounds like you don't trust me. And that's fine, but it would just be better if we talked about it now as opposed to once you paid me.
You go on, Dr. B, I'll bring it up on that.
The conversation started out about deliverables and outcomes.
Yep.
And then a little later you spoke about, you know, an outcome being that your business will increase by $100,000 to $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
How is that not a deliverable?
Because that's not a I mean, it is an outcome, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's a deliverable. This is my question, that you're saying, okay, here's an apple, I'm going to sell you this apple. But what you're selling something to the person, which is an outcome. You're calling it an outcome, but it's actually a concrete thing. It's a promise. Your business will increase by $1 million.
But okay, I got you.
Good.
I got you. So I guess if you were saying, I guarantee your business will increase by $100,000, then that's a deliverable. But you have to think, okay, if I'm guaranteeing that, what is the price going to be?
Yeah, I see, okay.
You know, like,
So in order to get to that, right, to
Like-
that deliverable, what do you have to do to make that happen?
to guarantee it,
Yeah.
you know, like the price is going to change dramatically. Like, there's like the Peter Drucker quote, all profit is derived from risk, right? And to guarantee a cash amount, like the price is going to be high, you know?
Right, so you're not guaranteeing it, you're saying if we work together, you know, your business can increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're basically saying, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, to guarantee something like that, either the price has to be really high,
Right.
so you can make sure with 100% certainty that it happens,
Yeah.
because like, there are a ton of variables that are happening. There's your behavior, there's the client's behavior, there's macroeconomic conditions,
Right.
like there's always risk, right? So when I tell people like, okay, just to think about like, what would be a reasonable price to set? If you can calculate, okay, the value that they're gonna get is, I don't know, 100 grand. I think somewhere from 10 to 20% of that is a fair price, factoring in risk
Right.
and uncertainty.
Yeah, I kind of get this, I mean,
I think something that Rich mentioned to me, maybe that will help, but that will sort of ground it, is you explained how a lot of the people that you work with end up leaning in towards the deliverables. Like, so I'm going to price it for the creation of the website, or I'm going to price it for the creation of the rebrand. And what your emphasis was, these things may happen, these things will be part of it, but let me price it and offer it based on what the outcome will be for the business. So the longer term tail, right?
Yeah, and the outcomes, this is a trap that I see people fall into all the time, tunneling in on the economic outcome.
Correct.
When most of the value that tends to be exchanged are in intangibles, right?
and longer lasting.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like Jameson's offer, no one's making money, maybe, unless they become a touring jazz musician, right? Tens of dollars. That's right, the tip jar. And yet that is immensely valuable to the people that he works with, you know, to the tune of thousands or maybe even $10,000. And there's no business ROI.
I think the thing that people get caught up on whenever you say like reach $100,000 months or something is like, oh, if I buy it, I'm going to get that, and that's like the deliverable.
Yep.
But I think it's just a matter of saying like, hey, would you like to have a business that
Can
have $100,000 months? Like, then
Right.
that's more clear, you know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we're aligned on this goal, then we should work together.
There's an agency that they put in their contract that their deliverable will be to generate $120,000 of new business. I mean, they're fucked basically, because like they just cannot deliver on it, so they can't get out of the deal. They were paid $20,000, but yeah.
If you're guaranteeing $120,000, the price needs to be more than $120,000,
Yeah.
not less.
They're on the hook.
Yeah, big time, for a long time. And this sort of, go on Xander, yeah? I just wanted to maybe just build on something that I've seen in Rich, which is a quality that he has, which I think relates to this, because I think that capacity to draw a line in the sand or to make that switch from outcomes to deliverables, from the deliverables to outcomes, yes. I actually see that those sorts of decisions are quite challenging when they arise in the moment. But I see something in you that is this, maybe I would call it restraint, or it's a restraint, but it's also sort of like a focusing muscle that you're employing or deploying all the time, where you're being quite intentional about how you're communicating, and equally how you are not going to communicate, where you're placing your time, and equally where you will not place your time. And it's all of those things are pointed towards something. So like in the How to Work Less course, one aspect of it is just totally focused on how to say no. And I remember in that you were saying that like for quite a large percentage of people, it's the most important thing that they learn. For quite a large percentage of people, it's the thing that they don't want to engage with at all.
Yep.
But I actually see that that's one of the core things that you are employing all the time. And I'm not sure if that's innate in you or if that's like something that you've developed as a muscle through your journey through recovery. But there's something there, which is it's this sort of micro engagement around what's important to me and what am I doing and what am I not doing. There's a lot that I just said there. So maybe the first thing that I want to ask you about is that something that is innate in you, or is that something that has come through your recovery journey?
Jeez. Is that innate in me or something that comes from my recovery journey? I think I've always been like this, dude.
Really?
Yeah. My teachers, when I was a kid, would my mom told me this. They would always be like, Rich only just gives the like bare minimum that is requested. They're like, here, you're just the facts. Like that's apparently a catchphrase from some like old TV show or something.
You're just facts.
Just the facts, yeah. So there, I'm not gonna like. I was just talking about this with Xander and some other people. We were talking about like, how impactful it is to tell a story in order to get a point across. And I was like, well, why would you tell a story when you could just like tell them the point? And that's like, that's just how I'm wired. And there's no right or wrong way, but I think that is just how I'm wired, dude, because I was 6 when this was going on.
Interesting, right?
So I don't know, maybe it's a gift or something.
Yeah, well, it's a quality I admire in you. It's a quality I try to develop somewhat in myself, and I see it in you like that. Yeah, I'm curious if you could just share what you told me when we were out on the hike about when you made the decision that you would start using AI, but also the decision not to use AI for the longest time possible. Because I think this is like a valuable way to approach.
So you want me to tell a story?
Entrepreneurship.
Yes. Okay. So I had made the decision for a long time that I was not going to engage with any AI shit, like ChatGPT or whatever. And I had just decided that it was, I don't know, it was a distraction. And I knew when I made that decision that there was going to come a time at some point in the future when it would become actively stupid for me to not be engaging with it. And then when that happened, I was like, one of my clients actually, I was like, you need to tell me when that is. And and when you tell me, I will re-engage. And that basically happened not too long ago, maybe a month or something ago. And I was actually working with him on a project. And he was kind of explaining to me like how he used the tool. And I got it. And I was like, oh, okay, I see. It's time now. I am willing to focus on it. But up until that point, I was just like, blinders on, don't care, not going to open up ChatGPT, not going to type stuff into it, not going to learn how to like engineer prompts or whatever. And it's kind of just like selective focus. And then also knowing when to turn that off and when things become important. And in that instance, like it was just a really easy proxy because I was like, all right, well, I'll just wait until a smart person tells me to do it. And I guess the skill there is being able to identify who can be that person for you. With that being said, do you want me to tell the story about how I used it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the big challenges that comes with doing anything that has like group stuff, group fulfillment, like college, for instance, is by its nature, you end up generating massive volumes of very helpful but long information every week. Like college is probably cranking out like 15 hours of calls a week, right? And in the lab, it tends to be 4 to 6 hours every single week. And I own the business, and I'm not going back and watching it, But I know there's magic there. So that was the challenge. And basically, Lorenzo, my client, he's a writer, and he is not a like bullshit fake writer. He was a journalist for a long time. He's an actual expert. He, was a journalist for many years until he kind of like switched paths. But he's a writer, and when he told me, I started integrating this stuff, and what would take me 8 hours to write a blog post or whatever, it now takes me 2, and it's as good or better. And I trust that Lorenzo is not like, he's not just trying to churn out shit to be done with his job, like he is obsessed with the craft. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. I should probably pay attention now. And so anyway, I kind of saw the light when he explained a little bit about how he was doing it, and then I went back and I was like, all right, let me download this Claude software. And I just took the transcript from one of the calls that we did. I like uploaded the whole thing in there, and then I took samples of my writing. So I've been writing for a long time. Like, I have a style, and I basically told the robot, like, listen, this is a 3-hour like coaching call that I did. I know that there are like important, deep insights in here that I'm not going to be able to figure out on my own. I want you to extract whatever the most unique, interesting insights that are not just like basic stuff. And then I want you to give it to me, and give it to me in the style that I write. And that thing spit something out that was 80% good enough that I was like, I am concerned and excited at the same time. I am both happy and sad. And that was a powerful moment for me because it solved a problem that I had always had, which is at this point, I have like a library of hundreds of hours of calls that I've done with people, and they're just sitting there collecting dust. And I know that there's really important stuff in there, and to take the time to extract it on your own, like, we just all only have so much time as the owners of our businesses. And it was just something I like would never make the time to do. So yeah, I did that. And I think like the lesson there, and this is kind of just more about AI, but I'll share it anyway, because it's what I'm thinking about, is when we were talking about this stuff, Lorenzo shared this article with me that was basically that like these tools are not going to level the playing field across the board. It's not going to be like everyone rises 50%, okay? The high performers are going to rise 1,000%, and the low performers are going to be fucked. Basically. There was like a study that they reference in there, and they're like, we gave entrepreneurs like access to these tools, and the top 10% entrepreneurs made $1,000 extra a month, and the bottom 10% lost money. They have less money than when they started using these tools. And the reason for that is all of the skills that make a great entrepreneur also help these tools, right? Because like, what is entrepreneurship? It's like making decisions, right? And your decisions can be as simple as like what is taste, right? It's making decisions about what you like and what you don't like. And even with like AI things, you have to be able to discern what's good and what's bad. So in my example, what I saw was like, this transcript has depth to it, right? Like if you upload a transcript of someone talking who doesn't have anything interesting to say, the AI is not going to do much for you, right? But there's like years of experience behind these conversations that are happening. And then they're being filtered through, okay, well, I've done a lot of writing. I'm a pretty decent writer. I have a style. And when you combine these things that have depth behind them and use the tool, then it actually spits out something that's worth paying attention to. And I would not like just be like, okay, post this. But it allows me to like generate insights that would normally take me sitting 3 hours and listening to a call transcript. And there are things that I would miss. I think that's it.
Yeah, you did well in telling a story to communicate a message.
Did it? Was there a message?
Yeah. The thing there that I just
I know we
bring
were
it-
originally just talking about like how do you
No,
make
but it's really
yes and no
important. It's
decisions,
because
but-
it showcases like the value of both selective focus, of restraint, and then once there's a commitment to like really explore the value in it, as opposed to just engaging in lots of things but without it having an intentionality. Yeah, I'm curious if there's any prompts or questions on that.
AI prompts. Do you want my prompts?
That's painful.
Just a quick note on AI, like Deloitte, right? Obviously, they install those kind of systems for corporations for $1 million up front. So the utility of being able to go through IP over a decade or two and create content from it is absolutely massive. I mean, it can't be overlooked how much leverage is there if you can, like you said, use it selectively, practice restraint in terms of just using it on everything all the time, because obviously that'll be valued and modified in business. So I just wanted to mention that this is a thing that's really happening, and to learn about large language models and agents, I think is something that cannot be overlooked in terms of being in technological, using technology to mine basically. I wanted to go back to this idea of like charging not what your work for what the work is worth, and how can be a challenging thing, I think, to understand, because we also talk about like this event is called life's work, right? Which means that we're trying to do our life's work, which means not compartmentalizing our part inside. So some practical ways, I think, of being able to charge competently for stuff that you're still learning about and actively engaging in and being on the edge of are the books that I've got recommended from you. So Value-Based Ease, Win Without Pitching Manifesto, very powerful, like concepts to really embody, and it also helps in saying no, because if you don't have control over what's actually going to create the outcomes, then promising deliverables doesn't help anyone at all. It's just busy work, and it creates resentment, and it's not going to grow your business by word of mouth, because that's doomed to failure. So those two books are very good. And then a book that you recommended to me, Patrick, on dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of being in the engagement and letting the true value emerge, that was like a life-changing book for me in group facilitation. So I'd highly recommend those 3 books. What was the last? Then the last book is on dialogue. Yeah, and that's more about like group facilitation and letting things like unwind and get to the root in a way which serves everyone. In terms of practical ways of like selling outcomes and not using deliverables as a gotcha, I think whatever you're charging, if you can consider what it would be charged, what it would feel like to charge 10 times or 100 times as much, and then sit in that discomfort and be very curious as to why we're so uncomfortable with it. That'll reveal to you stuff about your self-esteem and about what you equate your value to be in this life. And what Blake alluded to in his certain video, the 7 videos, was that as a human being, you have an infinite and innate value. You could never, ever put a dollar on even a single instance of your time, at a single instant. Like it's always a priceless thing to be alive. But when you play the worldly game of business, you have to put a dollar amount. So the way that I've approached this is either it's free or it's expensive. And the reason for that is both of those frequencies create gratitude and commitment. Yeah. If you go in the middle and you're like, yeah, I'll just give you more and more, there's no character development. And you basically do a tremendous disservice to the people. They just stay stuck and they just stand there. So those insights have really helped me cross that bridge and just charging more and more. And my final point is to the line in the sand. Keep raising the line. Just like go for it, and don't be afraid of like pushing the envelope. And if someone says no, then 3 more people will say yes next week. They're like, in a month. Like, you have to have the faith as an entrepreneur. Like, there's no real security in the environment. So maybe that's extreme, but every time I get on sales opportunity, I raise the price. And I'm at a point now in the true value phase where I don't know where that goes. And I'm just going to keep pushing it because that keeps me engaged. It keeps me excited. It's like, how far can I really take this? And because my heart's in the right place, like, I'm not going to let it down. I'm going to figure it out. And then a year into this, 2 years into this, that can start to have some pattern recognition. But I'm not going to try and rush to pattern recognition until I do a lot of work in. So suspend the disbelief and don't try to understand what you're learning for quite a while. Like in any sort of serious way, you can be curious about. Don't try to distill insights when you have 3 times. That's not really useful. And so those are my ideas. Nice one.
Perfect. No notes.
I think what I'm getting also for what's in this saying, I'm also from this, is that even we live in a culture where it's buy and sell. You know, you have something to want to buy something, you're selling something. And this is different. This is not the same. It's not a commodity. It's a matching with some kind. It's a support of some kind. It's growing of some kind. And what's helping me about this conversation, but also for some data involved, is that I'm not to sell something. And I'm not actually, it's not like I'm selling a car, like it's about the float or bike or something like that. It's like, am I the right person to be working? I mean, that's very different. Very helpful. Well said.
Shall we move into like a sort of a work on things sort of scenario? Yeah,
Sure.
I think like there's like 2 big themes there. I'm sure there's other things that we can get into, but around pricing and then also around like,
How to use AI in your business.
well, that's an option,
was a
but
joke.
really what to say no to and what to focus on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
'Cause these are like 2 qualities that I think you embody really well, and I think there's a lot of value that's generated from them. If there's other stuff that we want to get into, but yeah, what do you think?
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Rich.
You're welcome.